We have overcomplicated the lore behind the MCI. The MCI is one of those topics in Five Nights at Freddy's that seems to be pretty much solved. But like most things in this franchise, when we look at the details, it becomes a bit fuzzy. So I set out to create a timeline for the MCI that simplifies the story and explains every question we have about them. And I think I just may have solved the MCI. To truly understand the MCI, we need to look at their in-game appearances to see where all the confusion lies. And there's no better place to start than in Fnaf 3. Here we find several minigames that house the MCI spirits. If we interact with said spirits, they are given a birthday cake and are sent to the Happiest Day minigame. Once all the spirits from across the minigames are present for Happiest Day, only then can all 5 of them, plus the puppet, move on. Fnaf 3 is honestly a pretty satisfying ending for all these kids. They kill their killer, and they get their soul set free. However, Scott wouldn't end the story there, and went quick to work on Five Nights at Freddy's 4. Fnaf 4 set out to be both a prequel to the series, and also an origin for the most mysterious character, Golden Freddy. The Fnaf 4 minigames follow a scared crying child, not too dissimilar from the crying spirits from Fnaf 3, who gets killed in the mouth of Fredbear on his birthday. It's plain to see that this game is loaded with Happiest Day imagery. Every Fnaf 2 character that gets a minigame in Fnaf 3 is present here in some way, and the final minigame, where the crying child gets bitten, is a direct mirror to the Happiest Day from Fnaf 3. All of Fnaf 4 points to Bite Victim being the Golden Freddy spirit and the receiver of Happiest Day, explaining why Golden Freddy was always so different from the other animatronics, and also making Fnaf 3's good ending even more satisfying. Now that would be great and all if it ended there, but Fnaf 3 is infamously unsolvable and raises more questions than answers. And if you follow all the clues as I just did, there's a pretty apparent question left in your mind. How is the Bite Victim a missing child? After all, he dies at the hands of his brother, not William, and he dies in the most public place possible. There are at least 4 witnesses, and even if we take into account him living and at least being in a coma in the hospital, that too is a pretty public place. So if all signs point to this kid dying out in the open, then where's the 5th kid? Now there's a lot of ways people interpret this answer. One way to do this is to have the crying child be the 5th MCI victim, where he's stuffed into Fredbear by his father and Springlock. But that requires some leaps in logic, and I doubt Scott intended for us to solve the story like that at Fnaf 4's release. The other option is that the Bite Victim died at the hands of Golden Freddy, but didn't go on to possess him. But that makes all the Happiest Day imagery in Fnaf 4 meaningless. And it also makes the Golden Freddy spirit less important, again requiring us to fill in the blanks with basically headcanon just to make it so the 5th MCI victim is important. However, I have an answer to this question that could clear up all of this confusion and actually makes later game entries and their lore make more sense. But before I reveal that, consider liking and subscribing, as it helps me out a lot in making more awesome videos for you guys. And while you're down there, you might as well leave a comment on your thoughts so far, because what I'm about to say may seem a bit insane. So without further ado, the 5th MCI victim is none other than Elizabeth Afton. Now put your pitchforks away and let's look at the evidence. So what do we know for a fact about the MCI? Well, we know that there was definitely 5 kids, and we know they were stuffed into 5 suits. And the only 5 suits in Fnaf 1 are the Core 4 and Golden Freddy. But here's the crazy thing, only one of those statements are true. You see, if we look at the Fnaf 1 newspapers, which is where we get most of our information on the MCI outright, we see this. 2 local children were reportedly lured into a back room during the late hours of operation at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza on the night of June 26. 5 children are now linked to the incident at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Only 2 children were ever seen being lured on the cameras. We often confuse this newspaper for saying that all 5 kids went missing on June 26, but in reality, the MCI could have taken place over days, weeks, months even. The newspaper only ever says 5 kids are linked to the incident, which means the 3 other kids could have gone missing in relation to Freddy's. Hell, they don't even have to necessarily go missing at Freddy's. They could simply be tied to it. Now that alone isn't too crazy, but when we pair it with our other evidence about the MCI, it starts to paint a picture. Now the only thing we know about the MCI is that the bodies were never found, and of course the implication is that they were stuffed into the Fnaf 1 band of animatronics. But that conclusion is only by process of elimination in Fnaf 1. There weren't other animatronics to choose from that the kids could be stuffed in, but as more games came out, Golden Freddy as a character started to develop until we got to Fnaf 4, and now we've circled back. So with the idea that the MCI could have happened over the course of some time and at more places than just Freddy's, Elizabeth starts to make more sense as a candidate. So let's look at the evidence in sister location. What we know about Elizabeth and her death is spelled out for us pretty clearly. Circus Baby explains how she would count the children, and when there was one, she scooped them up. That's where we find our first piece of evidence, because Circus Baby specifically makes sure no one else can see her scoop up Elizabeth. It's in her programming, and Circus Baby even goes on to say that when the other children entered the room, they couldn't hear Elizabeth screaming. She just disappears without a trace. Now, a lot of people think Circus Baby's Pizza World closes down because of this, but I don't think it does. After all, Baby works as intended, so why would the place close over that? Especially when, again, no one saw her. And if no one saw her, that leaves one option for how this place closed. You see, in Fnaf 3, during one of the training tapes, Fungi explains how at a sister location, there were multiple simultaneous spring lock failures that get the spring locks decommissioned for good. And wouldn't you know it, but sister location has a whole night dedicated to a spring lock suit that Circus Baby says herself was not used as intended. But there's something else, which I think makes this option the reason Circus Baby's closed. And that answer is again found in Fnaf 3.
In case that the spring locks come loose while you are wearing a suit, please try to maneuver away from populated areas before bleeding out, as to not ruin the customer experience. There's been a slight change of company policy concerning use of the suit. Don't. The company has deemed the suit temporarily unfit for employees.
Fungi explains that there's protocol for employees to bleed out in the back away from customers, but then the suits get permanently retired after employee gets spring locked. That directly contrasts with what Fungi just said. Why would they retire the spring locks if they were fine with employees dying in them? Unless, of course, an employee wasn't caught in them, but rather a customer. This would explain why Baby says it wasn't used as intended, and this would explain why Fazbear would cover up closing Circus Babies. It's not because Elizabeth died. No one saw that. It's because a customer got caught in the spring lock suits and they didn't want it going public. A spring locking being the reason that Baby's closed firstly seems to be what Scott intended, but secondly means that Elizabeth would be missing at this point. And thanks again to the Fnaf 3 tapes, we know that shortly after, William would commit the MCI, where he would kidnap and lure 4 other kids near or into Freddy's, and with the sister location to Freddy's resulting in a missing kid as well, William would be associated with the 4 kids he lured, and his own daughter's disappearance. Unless, of course, he wasn't. With the springlock suits going into retirement, using one would put suspicion immediately on one of the owners who wore those suits regularly. But with Elizabeth's disappearance, William would have the perfect alibi. He lost his daughter too, and the newspapers in Fnaf 1 clearly say the perpetrator of the MCI was charged and convicted. meaning they did time. Yet we see William out and about in minigames like Follow Me, so it would make a lot of sense if William used his own daughter's disappearance to blame the MCI on his business partner, Henry. With all the evidence laid out on the table, how does this theory even solve the MCI? Well, to start, it makes it so there's only one Golden Freddy spirit in the bite victim, who makes the most sense for being the happiest day receiver, as well as the vengeful spirit of Ultimate Custom Night. However, this theory also solves Molten Freddy slightly, as one of the biggest problems with Molten MCI is that William never dismantles Golden Freddy, and in the Help Wanted Entered Repair level, there's only 4 Endo 01s in that furnace, not 5, making Molten Freddy only 4 of the MCI. But if Bite Victim, as Golden Freddy, isn't an MCI victim, and Elizabeth is, then it clears up that confusion as well. Now, I don't love Eliza MCI, but I think it really does make the narrative more simple. It makes Golden Freddy simpler. It makes Sister Location's timeline simpler. It fills in the holes of Molten MCI, and it even allows the FNAF 1 newspapers to not be written off, but to work in the narrative. So with all that, let me know what you think of this theory, because it's not without its holes. So let me know in the comments below. And consider liking and subscribing, because it helps out a ton. And as always, thanks so much for watching.